Our next speaker is Sean Vanderskot. About a year ago, I had the privilege of hearing Sean speak on after a day, a late afternoon of professional development. Not sure if you remember this, Sean, but it was pretty late in the evening, again on a school night, really a large group, speaking to a large group of first and second year teachers. We were tired. I was in the crowd, and it was a very long day. We'd done a lot of work. But his words and passion literally moved the crowd to action. And again, did I tell you it was a school night in the basement of a school off of Spear, I believe. So at that moment, I was convinced that I would love to have Sean speak and be with us this evening. He's a regional leader of Teach for America, an advocate for educational reform in Colorado. Please welcome Sean.
So I have a quote here that I looked up prior to coming here today, and it says, "Success builds character, failure reveals it." And I'm going to share with you all tonight things I've never shared with other people, a lot of my failures, a lot of the things that I've learned not to do again. And I'm going to share it through a discussion around my first year teaching. How many educators in this room? Wow, great. How many remember their first year teaching? Great. And in this process, I have to disclose that I'm likely going to cry. I'm likely going to laugh at myself. Hopefully you laugh with me. And I'm going to get really excited. I taught my first year in 2001 on the Navajo Nation in New Mexico. If you are familiar with Gallup, New Mexico, most people know where that small town is, about 100 miles outside of that. I started teaching third grade, taught for 2 years there, third and fifth grade. I was the only third grade teacher. I was the only fifth grade teacher. I moved in, and my roommate and I moved into this trailer, a double wide trailer. It was the biggest home I've ever lived in to date. It had no windows. It was 45 years old. The water was so full of uranium that it stunk like sulfur. I had a hole this big in front of the toilet that led to underneath the trailer, and if you've ever been underneath the trailer, you don't want things to come out of the underneath of the trailer. And in the evenings when you slept, along the wood paneling between me and the outdoors, you could hear this frequent It was the wood mice trying to get into my warm, humble abode. And so my trailer I had lined then with my roommate with aluminum cans and coffee cans at the base so we could keep all the rodents and the creatures out. My principal was my landlord, which I don't know how that's legal in any kind of way. My colleagues were my next door neighbors, and I worked 100 feet away from my school. Or I lived 100 feet away from my school. I ate, drank, slept, dreamed my school. And my kids were all Navajo. They're brilliant, beautiful little children. All my little kids, and I still keep in touch with many of them 10 years later. And starting third grade, the average of my students was at around a first grade to a kinder reading and math level, many of them in pre-primer, basically. Many of them non-lingual, not able to speak in their native tongue, nor in English or Spanish or any other language. And yet, when I arrived on that first day of school, me being more scared than they came running up to me. They said, Mister, are you the guy who lives in the double wide? I was like, yeah. And they said, what can my parents want to know what they can do to get that place? They've wanted it for years. And so I share that with you because at that moment in time, it became crystal clear that all my complaining, all my thoughts of how bad I had it, and my parents, as you can probably imagine, my parents were not too thrilled about where I was living, kind of struck me. Something real, something very real. And in that first year, I had 13 wonderful little kids, and I failed miserably. If you look at any kind of student achievement assessment that I had, my kids maybe grew a year in math and in reading and in writing. So that means they were going into the 4th grade, now on kindergarten and 1st grade level. I also failed as an educator. When I look back upon that year, I failed. And what I realized is I also had 7 other colleagues in that school. I had 13 young little kids. I had 2 parents for all those kids. I had all the grandparents. I didn't know any of them. Not a one. I knew my roommate. He was a great guy who was in my wedding. He played music at my wedding. That was it. And the last thing I failed on was the families. My family and the families in the community that I lived within. I had left my family back in Chicago, which is where I'm from. And I love my family. 5 siblings, 2 wonderful parents, great-grandparents, and all sorts of uncles and aunts and nieces and nephews. Never talked to them once. And those kids, my kids, I couldn't have told you one of the parents' names. Not one. I failed. And in that failure, I learned why I wake up in the morning. Why I go to sleep really frustrated every single night and wake up gleaming to take on the day. Equity. Equity, not equality, equity. I had a dialogue with a friend a few years ago, and they're like, they're the same thing. I'm like, no, they are not the same thing. Equality is we all have the opportunity to, at this moment in time, walk out that door because we're sitting here. Equity is reality is that guy close to the door, kind of short hair, glasses, red flannel, he's got a lot better opportunity to get out this door than I do. What does that mean in our classrooms? Let me give you a description. I just counted it. There's 100 people in this room. This is perfect. Makes math really easy for someone like me who taught their grade. I want everybody to stand up. That includes everybody, yes, thank you. Everybody who's also doing camera and that kind of stuff. I now want, this is the average graduating class, average kid, 9th graders. There's 100 of you. Okay? If you grow up on the Navajo Nation, urban Denver, Chicago, South Texas, here's the reality of these 100. I want everybody from the gentleman right here with the striped shirt, yes you, everybody to his left, yes, his left, sit down. Yeah, you're good. We're really, that's good. By the time we're in 12th grade, you all are no longer with us. I now want everybody but red shirt, cardigan, black, white, and button down to sit down. You 5 stay standing. Everybody else, down. These are of those 100 9th graders growing up in Denver, Colorado Springs. They're not my kids. These are the 5 that are going to graduate from college. All because of where they grew up. This is determined for these kids upon being born. That's just wrong. This is wrong. They have no different than the rest of us, and yet this is the reality that our kids deal with every day. This needs to change, and it needs to change fast. Thank you. So equity. How I learned to grapple with equity? Provide high expectations all the time, everywhere you go. And they're so silly, these cliches, right? Shoot for the stars, because if you miss them, you land on the moon. Oh, shucks. But if you shoot for the moon, you land on the earth. And if you shoot for the place next door, you don't move very far. Don't take that away from our kids by not giving them the opportunity. They're going to fail. I've failed a million times, and I'm a pretty lucky human being, and I know that. Give them that opportunity as educators that they deserve, and help them along the way. Take equity head on. I have a friend who was very lucky and very smart. He's African American, extraordinary athlete, graduated from Cornell, magna cum laude, studying nuclear physics with a BA in, like, I don't know, math, or a minor in math and another minor in language or something. I met him playing volleyball in Albuquerque. I met him as he sat there in between a game and he was reading the book called Zero. I'm like, I don't read books about numbers. I read Harry Potter. And we started hitting it off, and we got into a great conversation. And his goal, and why he was in New Mexico, he was getting his master's after he had just completed the Navy for 6 years with the Navy. He was getting his master's in geophysics. And he was going to go back to the Navy, and he wanted to be an astronaut. I'd never met anybody who wanted to be an astronaut. Everybody, I know as a third grader, I wanted to be an astronaut. And he shared with me what he was going to do in his plan, and he was going to be an astronaut. 3 years later, I participated in his wedding, and he applied. Thousands of people applied. He was one of 3,000 invited to a small interview. He was then one of 1,000 invited to another interview. He was one of 500 who was then brought to a one-day interview process. He was one of 40 who were finalists. This is hands down the smartest human being I know, the most capable. I mean, as an athlete, I was in awe of this human being. And on that last day, NASA stood in front of him and the 40 other people who had gone through this incredibly year-and-a-half-long rigorous process and said, nothing about your intelligence, your ability, everything else we screened you for matters now. It's your ability to get things done with other people. We're looking for the 8 people who can work together. He was selected as one of those 8 people. And I share that because a team is so much stronger than an individual. And as an educator in that first year, I did it all by myself. So I thought, and I failed. So I didn't do it by myself. I thought I was going to do it by myself, and I failed. A team is how things get done. I was very fortunate in my life to participate in athletics all through high school and college. In my junior year of high school, I had this volleyball team. We were all, I'm 6'4", used to be 6'5", I'm shrinking unfortunately, but 6'4", was 6'5" in high school, and everybody on our team was taller than me. Everyone. We were, hands down, we were going to win state that year. Everybody knew it. Best individual athletes on the team. Every single person was the best that was in the state of Illinois. We lost. Couldn't work together. We were so critical of each other. My brother played opposite me. Keith, he played in the Olympics when they won 4 years ago. Pat, extraordinary, he went on and played in college. Like, we were so critical of each other. All we did was just bicker and complain. The following year, we won state. And the reason we won state is because the guy next to me, Stoney knew that I have a tendency to lean left when I block. So Stoney would go right behind me and dig the ball. This was a team, a cohesive unit taking on something much bigger than ourselves, and we did it together. I learned that valuable lesson, again, my first year of teaching. And family. All those people I failed that first year. The parents and the community gave me their kids with the expectation that I'm going to give them the education that they came to school for. I wake up, I am who I am because of my family. I have a lot of baggage. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, blue-collar family, first graduating from college. Everybody is an electrician and a plumber and cops and EMTs and all these things. And that's who I am. I go home and That's my family. That's me. That's me. You're the same thing. You are who you are because you're family, good or bad. It is the baggage you have. And we ask our kids to check that at the door. That's silly. Every morning they wake up with that family, good or bad. Capitalize on it. Capitalize on it. And I want to close out with talking about my second year of teaching there. And share you a story about Jordan. Jordan was a bully. Jordan was the kid that everybody thought should be kicked out of school. There was 110 kids at our school, right? 60 miles away my kids would travel to come to school. Jordan would wake up every morning, grab water pails, walk 2 miles, literally, and get water because there was no water pipes to his home. He'd have to go and turn on the generator, put the gas in it because there's no electrical lines there. Jordan read at a first grade level and did math at about a second grade level. The teacher stories in the lounge, you would have thought Jordan was a beast, a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I met Jordan, he's like this tall. I am not kidding. Like this tall, from here to here. Like this kid was so short. And I'm like, this is Jordan? Jordan and I butted heads a lot that first year. Jordan and I spent a lot of time together. After school, during lunch, before school. Jordan started showing some great growth, both socially and academically. I talked to his mom all the time. I was there tutoring with her. I was tutoring her, and then I was tutoring with her, with Jordan. I told Jordan, you're going to be a sixth grader. And to me, a sixth grader means you can read, at that point, Harry Potter, all that kind of stuff was really big. You can read this book. And he's like, I'll never be able to read that, Mr. V. I'm like, no, you're going to read this book because this is what kids, my little 11-year-old cousin is reading. Therefore, you are going to read this because you are just like her. You're an 11-year-old. You have the capacity. And he made great gains. And then something happened over holiday break. And everything that I had spent the first semester was gone. And Jordan, and I was like, what is going on? And I just dug in there, and finally Jordan broke. And it turns out over holiday break, his dad was hauled away for some terrible things that he had done to his family. And the terrible things, this family reality, was part of Jordan. We got underneath that, and we started making those great gains again. And one of the proudest moments I had was standing in front of Lucinda. She spoke Navajo, I spoke English, so we couldn't speak, so Jordan had to interpret for us. And I showed her an A. And she knew an A in my class meant he was sixth grade ready. Words didn't need to be spoken. It was an amazing reality, and it changed my life. I learned my passions very quickly and firsthand. And so I leave you all with this one last thought. It's a quote, and I'm horrible about quoting who this is from, so I have no idea who this is from. Learn your own passion. It truly can change the world. Thank you.